In this video, we'll start to explore the equivalence of arrays and pointers, and we'll see some more examples of passing by reference using pointers. So I'm going to look at a file called arraysum.c. And so we've been using arrays, and in this file, we have two functions that are defined, one called addArrays and one called printArray. And both of these, they take in some arrays, maybe more than one, and they return void, but as you'll probably remember from previous lectures and previous assignments that we've done, these functions are actually manipulating arrays, and we can think of them even outputting arrays to us. So our addArrays function up here, it takes in our array A1, it takes in another array A2, and we're using the const keyword to indicate that these are inputs. They cannot be changed inside the function. And then we also have this integer array asum that has no const in front of it, and so we can probably assume that this is going to be an output. And in fact, asum is going to be the sum of A1 and A2. So we'll say assign asum to be the sum of A1 and A2. We also have our integer n to keep track of the sizes of these arrays. So in order to actually sum these, what do? We just walk over every position and we set asum at that position to be whatever A1 was at that position plus whatever A2 was at that position. And we are not returning anything, so we can have a return statement at the end here. We've also got a function to just print an array, and that just prints each element and then adds a new line. So what is the main part of our function doing here? We are allocating a 20-element integer array R1, a 20-element integer array R2, and a 20-element integer array rsum. We've got an integer I for our for loops, and then nums is just, we're only going to use the first 5 spots in our arrays. So first, we've allocated memory for R1, but we haven't put anything in it. So first we just declare R1, or excuse me, we assign values to R1. So maybe I'll comment out some print statements out down here so we can focus. So let's see. It looks like R1 is just going to be 1 through 5, and let's confirm that. And we don't use all our variables yet because we've got some stuff commented out. That's fine. And yes, A1 is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's take a look at A2. Here it looks like it's just going to be 0, 20, 40, 60, etc. Oh no, it's whatever was in R1 times 20. So it's going to be 20, 40, 60, etc. So again, let's double check that. And indeed it is 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So now we're going to just add those two arrays, and let's just make sure that our function is doing what we think it's doing. And there it looks like we successfully added them, 21, 42, etc. So at this point you might be saying to yourself, okay, well, I know what passing by value is and I know what passing by reference is, and if I am not returning anything from addArrays, how are we actually assigning values to our sum? Well, the reality is that because arrays are actually pointers to the front of the array, really we are passing the address here, and then we're using that to access the slots of the array. And so we could change this to actually be explicit about these being pointers. So change arguments to be pointers. So I could say, instead of saying that this is an array, I can say that this is a pointer to an integer. I can say this is a pointer to an integer, and I could say that this is a pointer to an integer. And then I could do something like, I guess I'm going to comment this out so that we can still see it. So let's think about it. So when I is 0, I would like to set whatever asum plus 0, so that's just I, is pointing to. So that's the front of my that's the value at the front of my asum array, to whatever a1 plus I is pointing to, plus whatever a2 plus I is pointing to. And so, like I said, when I consider I equals 0. So in that case, well, we just have whatever the start of asum points to, plus whatever a1 points to, plus whatever a2 points to, and that's going to get to our front of our array. When we consider I greater than 0, what's happening here is that C knows that when I use plus on my pointer, it's going to need to move ahead 8 bytes, right? So when I say plus 1, that means move ahead 8 bytes. When I say plus 2, it's going to move ahead 16 bytes, etc. So when I think about it, when, say, my I, let's say I equals 2, so there I'm going to be able to access, so we'll go, 1 would go forward 8, 2 is going to go forward 16, and so we've already made it to, now we're pointing to my third element, because at 0 I was pointing to my first element, at 1 I would be pointing to my second element, at 2 I'd be pointing to my third element, and so we can see how this is going to be equivalent to this. And now let's just check ourselves. And again, we get the right answer. So this is just a demo of how arrays and pointers are equivalent, and you've actually already been using pointers. And you already understand passing by reference.